Marco sat alone in his cramped apartment, staring at an old VHS tape resting on the table. His hand trembled as he reached for it, the weight of years of regret pressing down on his chest. He knew what was on the tape, a younger version of himself, full of hope, ambition, and naivety. Sliding it into the player, he pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing a bright, bustling film set. There he was, smiling, shaking hands with people he thought would change his life for the better. He leaned back in his chair, whiskey in hand, as memories came flooding back. It all began 15 years ago when Marco was a struggling actor, desperate to make ends meet. He had a family to support, a wife, Mira, and their young son, Luca. Work was hard to come by, and the bills were piling up. One day, while Marco was working a small-time gig, he met Nicola, a charismatic director with a reputation for making stars out of nobodies. "You have the look," Nicola had said, patting Marco on the back. "Raw, rugged, real. You're exactly what the industry needs right now. I can make you a star." Marco hesitated. Nicola's world seemed too good to be true, lavish sets, expensive clothes, and promises of fame and fortune. But when Nicola handed him an envelope full of cash as an advance, Marco's resolve broke. He needed the money, not for himself but for his family. At first, everything seemed harmless. The films he worked on were risque but tame by industry standards. He was paid handsomely, showered with attention, and invited to glamorous parties. For the first time in his life, he felt important. But it didn't take long for the cracks to show. One night, after filming a scene, Marco overheard Nicola speaking with a producer in hushed tones. "He's perfect," the producer said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "Completely clueless. We'll push him step by step, and he won't even realize what he's agreed to." Nicola chuckled. "That's the beauty of it. Give them just enough to feel special, and they'll do anything you ask." Marco's stomach churned, but he told himself it wasn't about him. He was doing what he had to do to survive. The scenes became darker over time, more degrading, more violent. The glamour of the industry faded, replaced by a sense of dread every time he stepped onto the set. Nicola's promises of stardom felt like a distant memory. One evening, Mira confronted him. "What are you doing to yourself, Marco?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger and sadness. "You come home late, drunk, and you can't even look me in the eye. What kind of example are you setting for Luca?" "I'm doing this for us," Marco shot back, though the words felt hollow. "I'm making money so we don't have to struggle anymore." Mira shook her head. "No. You're doing this because you're too afraid to walk away. Whatever they're paying you, it's not worth what you're losing." Her words hit him harder than he expected. That night, he stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back at him looked nothing like the hopeful actor who'd first stepped onto Nicola's set. The breaking point came at one of Nicola's infamous parties. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, laughter, and the clinking of glasses. Marco wandered through the crowd, feeling more out of place than ever. In the corner of the room, he noticed a young actor, barely 18, sitting nervously on a couch. Nicola stood over him, handing him a contract. The boy's hands trembled as he signed it, his eyes wide with fear. Marco's blood boiled. He marched over to Nicola, grabbing him by the arm. "Enough," Marco hissed. "He's just a kid." Nicola smirked, unfazed. "So were you when you started. Look where you are now. A star." Marco looked at the boy and saw himself, a desperate, naive soul being pulled into a world he didn't fully understand. For the first time, Marco realized he couldn't stand by and let it happen again. Walking away wasn't easy. Nicola didn't take betrayal lightly. Marco faced threats, blackmail, and public humiliation. The industry turned its back on him, but for the first time in years, he felt free. He started a foundation to help young actors escape exploitation, pouring his remaining savings into the cause. Slowly, he began to rebuild his life. Years later, Marco stood in front of a group of young actors at a community center. His voice was steady, his presence commanding. "They'll promise you everything," he said, "but it's a lie. Fame isn't worth your dignity. If you feel trapped, speak up. There's always a way out." The room was silent, the faces of the audience filled with understanding and gratitude. Back in his apartment, Marco turned off the tape. The man on the screen was long gone, replaced by someone who had fought his way back from the darkness. He picked up a photo of his son, now a teenager, and smiled faintly. "I can't change my past," he whispered, "but I can fight for their future." Marco set the photo back on the table and poured himself a cup of coffee. He had work to do.